So one of the ways we can understand integration is sort of disintegration, or more specifically, a bit of a lean into Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras, specifically Book 1, Sutras 29 through 31, where he's talking about the obstacles to yoga practice, right? Like a lot gets said about, oh, merge with the light and, just open your heart to God and enlightenment and, and yoga helped my back and I, I'm more less angry and like those sort of benefit things. We tend to extol those things, but less conversations around some of the challenges that go along with the yoga process. It's a very step by step move at the pace of seasons and decades and lifetimes kind of proposition and process. All your problems aren't going to just go away because you started doing yoga, at least not immediately. It takes, it's a nice parachute too. It's got that going for it. Like you have some emotional resilience. It can build emotional resilience. Things are hard. There's that. But the waking up part is it in my experience anyway, like it takes like this continual vigil and deciding that's what you want. There'll always be other more convenient options for sure. Did I meditate this morning or check my phone? It's that at the path of the phone. It happens, totally happens. So, some credence to the challenges along the way can be, a refreshing reminder, like an honest accounting of yoga process. And the lead up here in the verses that we're looking about, Patanjali just got done talking about meditation on Om and its meaning as a method, as a devotional method, as a method of surrender to Ishvara, or Ishvara Pranidhan. And he says from this one-pointed Om practice, consciousness turns inwards and the obstacles are overcome. Okay, if there's ever been a setup for like what are the obstacles, that is the coined phrase. So then he just lists them. Like, here they are. And there are 9 of them. I wish it were a shorter list. No, 4? 9. 9. It says disease, dullness, doubt. Doubt. Wow. That's a big one. Doubt. Carelessness, laziness, lack of motivation or inspiration for a spiritual aim, delusion. That's a fun one to self-reflect on, for sure. Like, isn't it interesting how I can paint the story in such a way that I'm the hero or the victim, and the other person is entirely the enemy? Right? How is that possible? A little bit of delusion in there. A little bit. Delusion, non-achievement of a yogic state. So, non-achievement of a yogic state. In other words, it's some sort of higher realization, samadhi, technically. And instability or failure to maintain that state or continue, some stability around it, are the distractions of the mind. Great word, distraction. of the mind, and they are obstacles in yoga. And so I'll just read it all again here. Disease, dullness, doubt, carelessness, laziness, worldliness, another way of saying the lack of spiritual aim, delusion, non-achievement of a yogic state, and instability to secure that state are the distractions of the mind, and they are obstacles in yoga, right? Not only yoga, any pursuit, any pursuit. If you're trying to cultivate some sort of higher aspiration, doubt and laziness and dullness, like that's not going to help you. It's not. And the thrust, in this yogic context, the thrust is how many of these things have to do with the outer world? Like, oh, street sweeping on the beginning of the month is the source of your misery, or the government, or taxes, or your past relationship is the source of are your obstacles. The only credence that's given to the sort of the outer space is maybe disease. That's a little liminal, right? The first one, disease. That might come from us from the outside a little bit. But the rest are entirely in our camp, in our corner, right? They have more to do with our sort of attitudinal position and where we're putting our energy. And health is also in our corner too. Like there's things we can do with our sleep and our eating and so forth that decrease the likelihood of something like disease, right? And then he goes on to list the symptoms that accompany a distracted state of mind. So if your mind is tangled up in all those obstacles that I just mentioned, you're like swimming in doubt and living in laziness and, continually getting sick, here's what you can look forward to: pain, depression, nervousness, and this is the lean in for this last one this afternoon, and hard breathing. And hard breathing are the symptoms that accompany a distracted state of mind. How do you know if your mind is sort of unstable or not honed in on a little bit more one-pointed ability? There's pain, there's depression, there's nervousness, and it'll show up in your breath as well. Are the symptoms that accompany a distracted state of mind. And then finally 132, and this is the like practice lean in here. Here's where we actually gain some agency in that equation, because that sounds like rough, doesn't it? Like those are rough obstacles and those are rough symptoms. And like, where do we gain a little bit of leverage? And it's remarkably simple how to sort of come out of those things, or at least in theory, it's simple. He says to prevent those obstacles and symptoms, practice on one principle. One principle is to be done. Boil your attention down to one point of attention, like a meditative object. If we develop the ability, cultivate one point, the ability for one pointed attention, those things, the doubt, the disease, the laziness, the pain, the depression, the anxiety, like all that will soften and abate just by virtue of cultivating this one thing, one pointed attention. Just develop that ability. Of course, there's a lot of techniques and so forth, and he goes on from here to list. So it's a perfect tee up for the next thing. So here's the one pointed principle, things you can focus on, different meditative techniques is the thing. Our point of entry, yes, one pointedness, we'll come down to that. And there's no greater point, well, maybe there's greater ones, but just simply the present moment is a phenomenal point of attention to come back to continually, and less about the outer circumstance. So if we can blend a little attention that way, like I'm aware that I'm washing the dishes kind of thing. But moreover, some sensitivity, some recognition of our own experience, right? In the form of sensation, in the form of prana, in the form of breath. These are all viable, one-pointed, focused points of attention that we can access on an ongoing basis to help us heal and integrate, to 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 to, to choose yoga, right? And precisely where we'll go with our practice, and moreover, we'll cultivate a range of breathing techniques, but more specifically, we'll come back to one-to-one breath ratio as a kind of foundational technique. So to hard breathing, in the commentary, it talks about various forms of hard breathing or erratic breathing in general. Some of us tend to be better inhalers, some of us tend to be better exhalers. But as a point of entry and discovery, as a baseline, cultivating the ability for a one-to-one ratio of breath is profoundly healing, profoundly nourishing, profoundly integrating.